So, what I really wanted to say was welcome to another session of Ramses, language of Ramses, using a Neveu book. But rather than the Neveu book, what we did last time was take a little break and go over some of the common verb forms we've already discussed and the constructions that you use them in. And we were going to continue that for another session. Resonance was good. I think it clarified a few things. I always find it very good to jog your memory as well. How does this really work? And so we said we're going to do another one of those sessions today. Again, this is going to be rather free form. I didn't prepare more than just a few sentences I jotted down and thought, well, let's try to translate this from English to Egyptian to see if we have those constructions under control. Before we go there, I have some quick cleanup to do. And the only challenge there is, let me see how we do this. If I go full screen, it's going to end up on my other monitor. And rather than fixing that, let's just do it this way. That should work too. So, quick correction from last time. The subject pronouns in verbal sentences. I already fixed it in the video, but just to go over it also verbally. In Middle Egyptian, you use the dependent pronoun. So if you want to say, I am there, it would be something like mik, we, im. You need some kind of particle to introduce the sentence. You wouldn't just go with the dependent pronoun right away. Normally, there's something before it. So let's say, look, I am there, or here I picked Khatebtu or Ju. I am on top of the mountain, not the most imaginative sentence, but I wanted something that I can take through all the different stages of the language. Um, so these are our dependent pronouns that you use in that function in Middle Egyptian. So there's we, there's chu and chen for the second person. So you male and you masculine singular, thou, if you will, if thou wilt. Su and si for the third person. So look, he is there would be mik su im, or she would be si, if I'm not mistaken. Plural, you don't see that often, but there's en, chen, and then of course the ubiquitous either sen or set. You would expect sen, makes a lot of sense for the third person plural, but you also see set. I think with or without plural strokes, if I'm not mistaken. Why that exactly happened, I'm not sure, but this can stand for the subject in adverbial sentences for the plural as well. That is for classical Middle Egyptian. So far, so good. Any comments? If not, then
Sorry, just for the idiots amongst
mhm.
us. What do you mean by subject pronoun? Can you say it in
Oh,
words?
absolutely. So let's see. And if I take a sentence like, um, I I bring the book. The I is the subject, and then bring the book would be the predicate, bring being the verb in that predicate, and the book being the direct object. So you have the subject. All of these could be pronouns. Like, for example, I bring it. In this case, the I needs a subject pronoun, I, and then the direct object, it. Well, in Egyptian, also in English, they would need different pronouns because, for example, he sees him. The subject pronoun is he, and the direct object pronoun is him. They have different forms. It's the same in Egyptian. That's why I put subject pronoun there. So if you use them, the I, you, he, she, etc., as subjects, they take this form in Middle Egyptian. I hope that. And unfortunately, when we get to late Egyptian, it changes whether you have the subject or the object. That's where I want to go eventually. They're not the same. So far, so good. And a little bit of trickiness is that while in English we use I as the subject pronoun, I, you, he is the subject pronoun in all sorts of sentences, and it's always the same as a subject. So it would be I am a student, I am there, and I listen. In Egyptian, all these use different pronouns because the pronoun depends on what kind of sentence construction you have. So, for example, when you want to say, I'm a student in Coptic, it would be Anok Matetis, or I guess Anok Umatetis. I am a student. But you would say Tisotem, I listen. You wouldn't say anoxotum. That's a beginner's mistake that people make a lot because they think from their language, where all the pronouns are always staying the same for the subject. Oh, I can just use anok everywhere. No, you can't. For adverbial sentences, you have to use one type. For nominal sentences, you have to use another. And for verbal sentences, yet another. That's a little complication that Egyptian brings with it. Yes,
So it's a bit like me and I. You can't say me is going to the shops. You say I am going to the shops.
correct, correct. That's exactly it. So we make that distinction in English between subject and object use, that you have different pronouns for both. For example, in Chinese, they would be the same. It's war in modern Chinese for either. So it's really completely dependent on the position in the sentence, if it's a subject or the object. In English, we still change the pronouns for subject versus object, but we don't care. Well, since all English sentences really are verbal sentences, it's always the same pronoun. In Egyptian, you have another layer of complexity. It depends on what kind of sentence you have. Is it verbal, adjectival, adverbial, or nominal? And they all have their own construction. That's essentially it in a nutshell. Okay, no, thanks. That was a good clarifying question. Any
I had
others
a
on?
question.
A quick
Yes,
question about the use of pronouns, independent pronouns for emphasis. Is that something that happens in Egyptian? Because oftentimes the pronoun
yes.
is as a prefix or a suffix of the verb. So the pronoun is there or implied, but it might not be spelled out as an independent pronoun. But I wonder if sometimes you can use an independent pronoun or some other type of pronoun to emphasize this is like I am telling you to do this versus
You
just I do this. I am telling you to do this.
You absolutely do. So you can use, as said, you can say, put a little star and asterisk in front. You can say anok sotem. I listen, that doesn't work. But anok comma ti sotem, as for me, I'm listening. That's absolutely possible for emphasis. Just like in English, you can use me, I didn't go. So the same thing that we do where we use another type of pronoun to put extra emphasis on there. Or sometimes we even use French, right? Moi? No, I didn't. So that same thing Egyptians do too with the independent pronoun. So it's ever the independent pronoun, yes. Trying to keep the name straight. Not easy. Yes,
Oh,
Rebecca.
thanks.
So if I want to say I am upon the mountain in, let's say, Demotic, which presumably is similar to late Egyptian, tui per tu.
That's exactly what it is. And I have it here in the column as well. So you use tui because Demotic uses the same subject pronoun as late Egyptian, so you're spot on. And that's also what you get in Coptic. I think in Coptic you would say ti hiptu do, or you would say ti hijen ebdo. So you see the similarity here. It's basically, and that's where I wanted to go. In late Egyptian, a big change happens. The Middle Egyptian we gets replaced by tui, but that tui then carries through all the way into Coptic. So that at least for the first person, you're using the same in late Egyptian, in Demotic, and in Coptic. And yes, the details may change a little bit. Okay, so hiepto, charepto, and then hiepto. Actually, it's pretty much the same. It's the same sentence in late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Cool. Now, what gets a bit tricky is which pronouns change in which state of the language. And that's where we got a bit confused last time. If let me do it chronologically. So in Middle Egyptian, you have we, tu, chu, and chen, and su and si for the singular. And in late Egyptian, the we gets replaced by tui most of the time. Then you have the chu gets replaced by tuk. This is new. And the chen gets replaced by tu. Originally, probably something like tuch, but the ch is already long silent. So it's really just tuk and tu. But the su stays. So the su is still the object pronoun. So if I want to say, I heard him, I heard would be gemi, not gemi, that would be I found. Sechmi or sechmui. I heard sechmui su. So it's not sechmui tuf or something most of the time. I say most of the time because I don't want to swear 100% that they never got confused, but like 99 point something percent of the time, it would basically definitely be su. So it is sechmui su. I heard him. Setchmui said, I heard her. Or starting from like definitely 20th dynasty, they just write them the same because they're both pronounced S. So that's for the third person. For the plural, the same two element gets adopted as well. So N becomes Tun, Chen becomes Tuten, and well, again, the set from earlier Middle Egyptian stays. So the important thing for late Egyptian is for the third person, you keep the Middle Egyptian pronouns, all the other ones get replaced. And I was trying to indicate that by the color here. So these are new, and the third person stays. For those who want to completely geek out on this in demotic, there's another shift. Egyptian just likes to reinvent things. So the Tui stays, the Tun, the Tuten, they all stay, but the third person now gets replaced. It gets replaced by EU plus F. So our little EU particle plus F, that becomes the standard third person for the masculine and the feminine version. And for the second person, you have a bit of a twitter. You have both the older form took, and you have also EU plus K. And then you see that in Coptic. If you've wondered how you get from here to here, well, that's how it is. In Coptic, you just have F and S, like exotem, you hear, F-sotem, he hears, S-sotem, she hears. And that's essentially these pronouns here. They carry on into Coptic. So basically, let's see, if you're sitting on the third person, for example, it stays from Middle Egyptian to Late Egyptian. Then it changes in Demotic, and that stays until Coptic. So there's like at least one break for all of them, with one exception. The Sen form, the Sen set stays all the way into Coptic. It really doesn't change. It just changes pronunciation-wise because the T falls off. So set becomes se, but it's still the same thing. I'd recommend to meditate a little bit on that chart because these little pronouns, like I said, they change. Knowing how they work just makes it so much easier to read a sentence correctly if you can actually do this yourself and inflect a sentence that way. So basically, tui sajam, I hear, tuk sajam, you hear, said to a woman, to a man, to sajam, to a woman, su sajam, se sajam, etc. If you have like that pattern down, it makes it easier to recognize sentences properly. All right. So much for my beginning speech. Questions on this, if any?
Why have you put hijam per to? Is that the impersonal?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. And I got that question also in the chat. I just wanted to have a complete sentence. So I just wanted to have, hang on, let me put something here
Oh,
to
so we're
delay.
adding the thing of our choice,
Right, exactly. So
the different Egyptian things.
right. So I want to say I am upon the mountain, basically, on top of the mountain, and then the different pronouns, basically, before that. I'm not sure if I can merge that here. Yes, I
In
can.
which period? Late Egyptian?
In all of these. So middle, late, Demotic, Coptic.
Sorry, everyone, I'm being completely stupid. It's because I'm.
Well, I should have spelled that out. And so it gets better with every comment. I hope. We're working on it. So essentially, this is what it should have been. So stage of the language on top, Middle Egyptian, Late Egyptian, Demotic, Coptic. And then if there's an introductory particle, which really only Middle Egyptian needs for adverbial sentences, the other ones are happy to just start right with the subject pronoun. And so I have the different subject pronouns here, and then I just complete the sentence. I could have put im there, I could have put die here, or anything else. I just wanted to have something to close out the sentence.
Oh, I see. So, hr in Middle Egyptian means on top of. No,
Correct.
it means
Upon.
Yeah,
upon.
upon. Oh, upon hearing.
That's right.
Okay, so on stroke upon.
Correct.
I didn't know it was so physical.
It is. It really is. Yeah, like you can be like upon the ship or something. It would be her.
Yeah, I knew that her meant upon, but I didn't think it meant on.
Yes, both. Hard
So
to tell them apart.
Ends up as hidden.
It actually ends up as he, and then the j n is actually literally the head off. He
Yes,
jaja
I
n.
recognize. Yeah, I recognize that from the picture of the head in the Middle Egyptian.
Right. So you could say hipto, I think. Hijin, Abdo sounded better to me, but honestly, I think both could be correct. I still have to read a lot more Coptic to really feel 100% comfortable. I know this works. I think he, Abdo would also work. I don't think it would be wrong. It's a little bit like on and upon in English. They're really hard to tell apart. I'm
Yeah,
upon the
are
mountain.
they?
I'm on the mountain. It's almost the same, right? Can you
Well,
tell the
I thought it
difference?
was the same, to be honest. I thought it was the same. So quite often, me being old-fashioned, I'll say upon when I
Yeah.
know it's really, I'll say upon when I know that others would say on.
The book's on the table, the book's upon the table, the
Yes,
little,
exactly. So I use upon quite a lot.
it
So
sounds
I now realize you're saying upon the top of the mountain.
right. And I mean, really,
Yeah.
really, this is what it says. It's I'm a bit I was ambivalent here because dep really means on top of. Um, this is from an actual text. I looked it up. Hipatu is what it says in the text. So no dep involved. I think I found this in Demotic. I wanted to make sure that I'm not making stuff up. So usually when I show you guys something, it's somewhere from a real text. So a little bit here. This definitely has a top. This one doesn't have a top. What do I know?
Yeah. So in that case, in the Middle Edition, is it um upon head mountain, in fact? Where do you get the from?
And that's really interesting. Middle Egyptian doesn't have a the. Middle Egyptian is like
Ah.
Chinese, is like Russian, perfectly happy without a definite article. As, by the way, also Latin, right? Greek has it. Latin doesn't have a definite article, and Middle Egyptian is the same way.
So you could put in your state of the language, in your introductory stuff, you could put upon head in brackets, head stroke top, the head of the
Um,
mountain up here. Upon head mountain is equivalent to upon the upon head the mountain, and the
I,
of is understood.
I
a
think tap also means top,
top.
right?
Could
So
I
maybe
chip in
on the top.
Yes, yes, Chris.
I was going to say, could I chip in from what my memory of Middle Egyptian, which is where I come at this from? Her tut is a sort of a compound um, preposition.
It is.
Her, it simply means over or above or something like that. And when they want to mean on top, they put this second bit, and it's like a two-syllable word. Would that fit with what you think, Aurelio?
Absolutely. So it's a compound preposition, like hijin in Coptic as well. It means literally, if you like break down the etymology, it means upon the head of, but that's not how a Coptic person would conceptualize it. They may not even be aware. Just like nah, how I'm trying to think of an English equivalent. Uh, just like if I were to say that happens downstream of production in English, in a like a process environment, that happens downstream of the production process. We're not really talking about streams and down. Everybody understands, I mean, further along the line, but you're using that figurative expression. It's sort of the same here, exactly like Chris was saying. Dep is really just a compound preposition meaning upon or on.
I think a good example in English would be the fact that they're like if you have a word that has a Latin derivation and then you don't think of that Latin derivation because you're only familiar with the English meaning, but the same concept comes across, it's just sort of a simpler colloquial meaning.
Probably, absolutely.
So
Do you have one?
like antebellum, for example.
It went over your head.
Like that's actually just a Latin expression, but people hear it and they're like, oh yeah, it's before the war, the antebellum period.
Exactly.
But there are better ones like adverse, like or something adversary, where they don't think that it's. You might not necessarily think automatically, oh, it's from adversus, where it has odd meaning against in it from Latin, unless you've studied classics. But
Yeah, it's
but
just
you
that
hear it.
it's just that I find it really helpful knowing that. So now I know
I
it's
agree.
upon head mountain. In the same way, antebellum, I can understand because I find out what it means. So it's just the way my mind works. It works historically
I'm the same way. Knowing the etymology is super
Always
helpful,
helps.
even if people who are contemporary speakers and readers of language don't need to know that to understand it. I think it's helpful for us learning about it.
Couldn't agree more. And like Christopher was saying, it went over your head as a good example where we say that. I mean, you can still understand the elements, but you're not really thinking about it. It just basically means that was too. I didn't catch that, essentially. I didn't catch that. Again, we're not talking about
Yeah.
balls, right? But that's where it
Idioms
came
are
from.
great.
Idioms are great.
Like water over the bridge versus water under the bridge. You probably want it to be water under the bridge. Water over the bridge is bad. That means the bridge is underwater. Don't want that.
Before we go into like a complete rabbit hole tailspin, there's one movie. What's the movie called again? Margin Call, about the 2008 Wall Street crisis. And there's the famous sentence in there. Well, not really famous, but I love it. That spilled milk under the bridge. It's just like a great combination of mixed up. And
Don't
the
look in the
cat.
horse's mouth for that or something. I don't know.
Exactly, yeah. And then the character who says that is actually one of the smartest folks in the room. I think what he's trying to do is he's basically trying to make himself look dumb intentionally, basically by using this malapropism there to lighten the situation. But in any case, that's too far afield. So we've talked about the subject pronoun. The Now the tricky part is, so in Middle Egyptian, I have to show you guys something else, and I hope I got this right because I prepared it literally like 5 minutes before this call. So this is used as the subject pronoun in Middle Egyptian for adverbial sentences. Whenever you have an adverbial sentence, you would use these things, unless you have a you and a suffix pronoun before it. I mean, that's the other way how to do it. They are also used as direct object pronouns in Middle Egyptian. So in Middle Egyptian, if I want to say, I heard him, for example, back to my example, Sech Muisu. I heard him. Sorry, that would now be back in Late Egyptian, damn it. That would be a Sejem NF. So Sajem Nafsu. I better write this down. Otherwise it gets too confusing. So Middle Egyptian. In Middle Egyptian, first off, adverbial sentences. Mik, mik, we, im. Look, I am there. Or mik, pa, 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 pa. Can you do this? Somebody who's Middle Egyptian is better. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can I do this? Mik, we, hasejem. I'm upon hearing. I think we
Yeah,
can, right?
the hair would the hair wouldn't be
Sounds all
there.
right.
All
Yeah,
in
that
agreement?
the hair wouldn't be there though because you're treating hair as like an infinitive almost, right? So
Wouldn't the her be there for the pseudo-verbal
Wouldn't you
in Middle
need a
Egyptian?
suffix for sejim?
for
Sejemi?
pseudo-verbal
Like I.
construction, you can
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
hair plus infinitive.
Yep.
Yeah, you do it that way. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then it's still we, right? I mean, later they replace it by tui Hosejim, like for our late Egyptian. But I think in like classical, I think you say we Hosejim, if I'm not completely mistaken. Oh boy, if I get this wrong, I'll have to edit a lot later. Let's check it. Bear with me here.
Yeah, there's a famous what do you call it? Sort of stela with a picture of a chap roasting a goose.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the inscription under it says Mac we her. I can't remember the word for roasting, but it's exactly that. And he says,
Right.
I've been roasting this goose since eternity.
Since the beginning of time. Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
remember that one. That's a famous one. You're right.
And
So it
that's
is
in Middle
we.
Egyptian?
That's Middle
Okay,
Egyptian.
cool. Nice.
Yeah, right. So no, thank you. That's a great example. And guys, bear
That's
with
way
me.
overcooked at this point, probably. A
Say
couple
again.
1,000 years of roast. Sorry.
I missed it.
Just a bad joke. Don't worry about it. I said that goose is way overcooked. A couple 1,000 years later.
Indeed.
They use a lot of oil.
Okay, here we go. Just
Really,
to
when you have a moment, I have a question about the different types of pronouns in Middle Egyptian.
let's get there in a moment. Let me just round this one off. So here's Alan on the topic, third edition. Pseudo-verbal, so that's our Herde plus infinitive construction, normally expressed by a suffix. Sure, I mean, if it's like after you, or dependent pronoun, so that's what we're talking about, after an introductory particle. And then
In
there's
that example, sorry, Chris, I looked up that example you're talking about. It's actually UE. UE hermach.
Hang on, can I make this bigger? I think I can hit the pin button.
Mine.
Don't move it.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, and you can sort of see it. There's the EU, and then the E is a little bit broken up. Perfect. So this uses EU plus suffix pronoun. I think if you didn't want to use the EU, go ahead.
But I think you're right. I think if you want to use mech instead, then it would be the dependent pronoun.
I think so. Although later they on the way to late Egyptian, they do this thing. They would say tui and then no particle, tui and then whatever the Herde plus segem or the R plus infinitive would be. So yeah. And Ben, you had a question, you said.
I was wondering about, so in Alan's Grammar of Middle Egyptian, he talks about at least 3 different kinds of pronouns that are all different kinds of personal pronouns. So there's the suffix ones that we all know and love that are all over the place, that are only as suffixes, and to nouns, and also they are similar to verbal endings a lot of the time. And then there's the independent and dependent. So you were calling what you were calling in your list earlier the subject pronouns. I think those match with what Alan calls the dependent pronouns. Whereas there's also the independent pronouns, which are like enek, which becomes a knock, and those sorts of things. So I just wanted to clarify that they become subject pronouns in late Egyptian, or are they also sometimes used as objects in late Egyptian too? Because if so, it's a bit iffy to call them subject pronouns. I mean, not that that's necessarily your term, but I find that annoying. If they're still used as direct objects, why call them in late Egyptian, why call them subject pronouns? Because it doesn't work in Middle Egyptian, at least, because they can be subjects or objects. It can be he or him, for example.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. That's a really good call out. So in Middle Egyptian, you have, like you said, you have those so-called dependent pronouns, we, chen, su, etc. How do you use them? You use them as direct object pronouns. That's one. So whenever you have a verb form like I give him or something, you use the dependent pronoun for the him. Then you use them as the subject pronoun in adverbial sentences,
Right, they can
including,
stand alone.
go again?
No, I said they can stand alone.
Yes, they can be the subject in those basically, although they would need a particle for that in Middle Egyptian. So not completely alone, unless I missed something. Then they can also,
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. No, I see you're right, like mech.
So let me give an example for each, like D N E Su. I gave him, or it. So this is a verbal form here, segem and F, and I put my dependent pronoun as the direct object. Subject pronoun in adverbial sentences, simple like su im, he is there. Oh, wait, I'm missing my mic su im. You can also say eu f im. Instead of using the mig and the dependent pronoun, you could also use the eu and the subject pronoun. But let's not complicate it too much. Okay, and then you also have adjectival sentences. Like nefer su is the type, right? Nefer good, he is good, or it is good. So the dependent pronouns have 3 major use cases. There's a 4th one around possession, which I'm going to skip now. But basically, this is the pronoun. It's called the dependent pronoun. It has different functions. Direct object pronoun, subject pronoun in adverbial sentences, and subject pronoun in adjectival sentences. So far with me? Then on the way out of Middle Egyptian, you get a new one, which is this tui, took. I'm not doing the feminine forms right now just to save time. Called the, I like to call it just the subject pronoun because that's easier, but there is a special name for it. What is it called? The preformative? Sounds like some kind of dancing. Preformative pronoun. These guys. And they are becoming the subject pronoun for adverbial sentences. And since the adverbial sentence, the tui cheresedjem, becomes like the standard verbal sentence, quote unquote. It's not really a verbal sentence, but it becomes the equivalent of a lot of verbal sentences in late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic. These preformative pronouns being used as a subject pronoun, they're just like all over the place. They're super important. That's why I give them so much airtime, because you see them so much. Yeah. So to answer your question, this here is what the pronoun is called, and this is what it does, if that makes sense. It can function as an object or it can function as subject in different constructions. It's kind of important to keep those apart. Does that
Yeah, that's
clarify it
really
a bit?
helpful. Thank you. That does, yeah, thank you.
Cool. So then let's round this off, and then I'm really going to go to the examples. So in late Egyptian, you still have your suffix pronouns. Hasn't changed. They're super resilient. You have your independent pronouns. They haven't changed either. Your anuk and tok and tof, etc. And they're still being used the same way. You use them for nominal sentences. Look, I'm your father. Anuk pekiot, or pekit. Third, you have the dependent pronoun still used as direct object. That still happens. And you have the new preformative pronouns used as subject for adverbial sentences. So basically, this function has essentially moved from the dependent pronoun to the preformative pronoun. This is new, but you still use the old pronoun as a direct object. And that can be a bit confusing because if we go back to my little chart here, some of these changed, right? So before that, you had a chu, which could be a direct object for a sentence, like I heard you. You would say sejem nai chu. But now you would still do that. You would say sechmui chu or sechmui tu in late Egyptian. But if you use the same chu in the adverbial sentence, that's now being replaced by tuk. So it took me a while to get my head around it, that the same thing that was like one thing in Middle Egyptian is now essentially being replaced by two, namely by the new forms of the dependent pronoun in late Egyptian or by the suffix pronoun. And I'm sure by now I've confused everybody, but I just want to say this thing lives on, but it becomes two. It becomes this, and it becomes what these things are in late Egyptian. And I have a table, and I hope it's correct. So just for the fun of it, the dependent pronoun, the way it lives on in late Egyptian is the we stays the same. The chu becomes more of a T sound, sure. The su stays on. And I think the chen gets replaced by tuten, but I need to double check that. I hope I have that right. As a matter of fact, let's check it. Like I said, I made this like 5 minutes before the call. I didn't even have a chance to proofread it. So let's have a look. Dependent pronoun in late Egyptian. And you don't see all of them all the time. Here we go. So we stays the same as in Middle Egyptian. Chu becomes tu. Chen becomes T. That's the hardest one to get used to because this was Chen in Middle Egyptian. Now it's T. Su stays the same. Set stays was C before. Had a little like the Y double strokes. And Chen becomes Tuten, and then you can still have Sun or Set for the for the dependent pronoun, plural, third person. So that is the direct object pronoun. It was still used with adjectival predicates. That hasn't changed. Yeah. Okay. I hope that helps. It's a lot in one go. Let's practice it. Let's practice it with some actual sentences. So let's make it simple. Let's say, how would you say, I have found him in late Egyptian?
Gemini-su.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, let me write that down. So Gemini Su. Okay, that would be good Middle Egyptian.
Middle
What
Late
changes?
Egyptian,
What changes?
Dui. So it'd be Dui,
Let me
hair,
stop. Yeah,
No
okay.
end.
Let me write it down first. Hang on, I'll go to transliteration mode. Dui, her, yeah.
Gem, Set, or Set. No, not Set. Su, not Su. Se.
Su. Su or
Su.
se. Both are correct. Now, is this past tense or present?
Let's see here. Plus this first present. This is I found it.
Isn't it?
That's
Well, to
present.
make it a past tense, it would be a Sejm F, right? But we don't have that here. I found him.
Would it be ear?
You could.
Ear
More. That's
in
more.
past tense?
That's more later though. I'd like to
Oh,
stay
okay, I
with
was thinking
the.
about Coptic.
Yeah, you're thinking Coptic, and that's not wrong, but for Coptic. But let's for this stage.
Just-
Yeah,
Just Gem-Isu, yes? Gem-Isu,
you are correct.
Sejma.
Yep. So the Gem Ni Su, which you sometimes still see, the Sejm NF, it's not completely dead, but it's rare. The normal form for the past tense would be Gemi Su. I found him. This thing here is the first present, so that would really be I find him, like I am finding him or something like that. So this is the first present. Well, let me put this in parentheses so we have that clear. Oh, and here's a little problem. That's why. Okay, there's I'll explain that in a moment. So this is a past F, which is just basically that's the bread and butter past tense of late Egyptian. This here is it Su. Gem is an infinitive, and infinitives don't take the dependent pronoun as an object. They take the suffix pronouns. So if I want to say I'm finding him, you actually use gemf, or because gemi is a weak verb and it has a feminine infinitive, it's actually gemtuf. So now we have it completely. So this would be first present, or let me do it this way. Present one. Performative pronoun plus her plus infinitive plus subject pronoun as the object. While this here is a past HMF with the suffix pronoun as the subject and a subject and dependent pronoun as object. For, I think, speakers of most Indo-European languages, this is super confusing. You're using different objects depending on what the construction is. So in the first present, because your verb is an infinitive, you're sticking the direct object on there as a, sorry, not subject pronoun. I always mix these up. Suffix pronoun. You're sticking the suffix pronoun at the end of the verb, and if the verb is a weak verb, it actually gets a little t ending in the middle. If it had been sejm, it would just be sejmef. It would not be sejmtef. The t is just there because it's a weak verb. So in the past tense, you use the dependent pronoun. Takes some getting used to.
Why is gem considered to be a weak verb? Is that because it only has two root consonants, or is there a
Gammy. It's gammy.
gammy? Oh, so it ends in a weak consonant, basically.
Right.
The
So
third
the root
weak.
the root is gammy to find, and then the infinitive is gamete, basically. And then if you
Got
stick
it.
a
Okay.
if you stick a suffix pronoun on there as an object, so to find me would be gemtui, to find you would be gemtuk, or for the feminine variant, gemtu, and then so on. Gemtuf, you see a lot. They don't always write the T. And sometimes they write it where it doesn't belong. So that's a little bit of a nuisance, but very often they write it, especially for like common verbs like gemi. And it's still there in Coptic. You would say chintef, so like this.
Could you
Chintef.
write a strong verb as a counterexample like sejem?
Sure.
Would it just be
Certainly.
sejemi? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
So root would be sejem, infinitive, also sejem, no change. Maybe they were, no, that's it. So to hear me would be sejmi, sejmek, and so on. Indistinguishable from like a sejem F. Now I am actually not completely sure if sejem is the best example, because I believe normally you sejem ne. You listen to me. I think you use a preposition there. I'm not completely sure how common sejem is with a direct suffix pronoun as an
Okay.
object. Would have to look at some samples. I know I've seen this a lot. Listen to me, which however also has the meaning to obey. So I'm wondering now if there's a difference between sejemi and sejemni. That's semantic, but I'll put a question mark there. I'll put a pin in it. I have to look at a few
It's
examples.
kind of like a verb that takes a prepositional object as its
Yeah.
object. Like prepositional phrase as its object. Okay.
Or maybe both is possible and they have a different meaning. And I have something at the back of my head there.
I think if
Aaron?
I
if
see.
it's got the sense of to hear, then it can do that. Like I hear him,
Right.
sejem e su.
Mm-hmm.
Versus I listen to, or I
I
pay
listen.
attention to.
Right.
Okay.
I remember something like that too. So you're basically saying sejemi tsu versus sejem an F, right? So this would be
Mm.
I hear him, I hear him, and this would be like I listen to him. Or as Gardiner would have, I hearken to him, or I hearken him, or something of that nature.
Maybe we should use a less complicated verb, like
I
I
heed him.
eat it. Yeah.
I what?
Something
Say again?
that's- Maybe we should use a less complicated verb like eat. I eat it.
Eat. Okay, I eat him.
I give heed to.
It.
There's a
That
goose,
sounds
naturally,
dangerous.
not
Yeah,
funny.
it's
I eat the goose. I eat him.
Cannibal him.
Or it.
all right.
Pyramid.
Be inanimate.
I eat a male goose.
I eat the
I
bread.
eat him.
I eat it. I
Okay.
mean, it's the same. It and him is the same. It doesn't make a
Right.
difference.
So
That's the problem with having
so
only two grammatical genders.
there you go. So the infinitive would be one. If you wanted to say with the infinitive to eat him or it would be wenameth. But in a sentence, wenemi su, I eat it or him, in this case, with a dependent pronoun. I am eating it.
So I ate though.
Oh,
this
for
case.
late Egyptian, yes, you're correct. Right, I'm keep switching. I keep switching now. You're right. So I ate. Thank you very much. Did I put the N in the right place? Yes, right. It's Wenham, I believe. Because the thing is, at this point in time, it's really Wom. They don't pronounce the N anymore, but I think it's still spelled that way. Okay, so yeah. That's how it works with those pronouns. Yes, question, Rebecca.
Well, at the risk of driving you insane, and we need to be quick about it, I know you tell me every week. I was understanding I have found him. Gumi Su, I found him. But when you put past Sejam F in, as always, I get lost because I still don't understand what you mean by Sejam F. Can somebody put that into English for me? What I mean is English for an idiot.
Well, let's see if I can bring it to a simple
Why do you
formula.
keep saying Sejam F all the time? Because that to me just means hear it, hear him, or find him. So why do you say a past find him with the suffix pronoun?
That is correct. It's just that verb form normally, like Ben mentioned last time, the verb form normally is called the Sejam F, just like you would call it the katal or the pil or
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, you're going to have to keep reminding me each week.
no worries. It's
I
just
got equally confused with the Hebrew. I thought, why
yeah.
they keep going on about? Because I never got the first bit. I never really understood why we're doing that in the first place.
It's just that they like to use an inflected form of a standard verb as the name for the verb form. It's really like the pil and hitpail and whatnot in
And
Hebrew. And you don't call it perfect, you call it whatever the verb form is. It's just a naming
and
convention.
does it always come with a tense? Because so
Yes.
does that imply a tense then? Sejamef implies the past.
In late Egyptian, yes, past or future. When you see something that looks like this, basically, that basically looks like the root of the verb plus suffix pronoun, then the grammarians
Yes.
are going to call that the Sejamaf form.
Oh.
No matter if the
And for the past, and generally for the past, or always for the past.
always so the past is constructed using that verb form in late Egyptian. If you want to express the simple past, then you just use that verb form that consists of the root plus the suffix pronouns. And that
But it's
verb form,
different in Middle Egyptian.
yes. I was
Late
going to skip that.
Egyptian is oh, sorry. But that's also similar to Hebrew. So modern Hebrew versus biblical Hebrew. There's the future tense in modern Hebrew was originally the imperfective in biblical Hebrew.
Right,
So it doesn't have a specific tense in the older form of the language.
right.
And it's similar, I think, with Middle and Late Egyptian. So
Correct. So these things change over time, but for late Egyptian, it's correct to say that if you want to express the past tense, you use root plus suffix pronoun, or if it's a nominal subject, then root plus nominal subject. And that thing is always universally referred to as the sejam F, whether the verb is sejam or not, and whether the suffix pronoun is F or not. Doesn't matter. It's just the naming. I should correct myself a little bit there. Some grammarians have taken to call it the setep F. He chose. And I have no idea why.
why not?
I asked Christian at some point in time, I asked, why did they switch from Sitgem F to Sitgem F? And he said, oh, it's just fun to use another, basically.
You get so sick of hearing Sejam everywhere, I
I
guess.
guess. So I've seen, for example, one grammar that does it is our Cherny super voluminous late Egyptian grammar. It's a great grammar. It's about yay thick, and it uses Sitep F all over the place. And in the beginning, I thought, oh, does this mean something special? And then eventually I realized that no, they just keep saying setup F instead of Sejam F, but it's the same thing. Good luck.
What does setup mean?
To choose.
Oh,
Like in
shoot.
Mhm.
Okay. Right. So I now understand that this Sejam F is the way in which they expressed what we call the past.
Right.
But there may be a whole different conceptual system anyway.
I should say that actually they in this case is the modern grammarians of Middle and Late Egyptian, who were all Semitically trained, Semitic language trained, and so they applied the same logic of using a standard verb and calling verb forms by the forms of that standard verb. How the Egyptians called this tense or this verb form, we have no idea, unfortunately. There's very little that
Yes, because
survives.
conceptually it could be something totally different.
It could be so different. Like if you look at
Yeah.
Japanese grammar, it's like, what are they
Yeah.
even talking about? None of the terms match. It's annoying.
So if anyone like me is watching this, I mean, again, learning ancient Hebrew was double Dutch to me because I couldn't even understand what the hell they were talking about. Anyway, in the event, I worked it out just by looking at examples, and then I translated it into something that I could understand.
Right. That's a text I'm getting used to, absolutely. Little addition, this form, so far we've seen it used for the past. The next chapter after this little recap session block is going to be about the prospective sediment for the future. So it has two different meanings. It can be for the past, or it can be for may he hear, may he choose, etc. The so-called prospective form. And especially that one, you see probably even more often than the past tense because they talk about what you want or what you wish for or what you think is going to happen an awful lot. So yeah, whenever you see a verb form that looks like this, root plus suffix pronoun or direct nominal subject, the first question always in my head is it past or is it prospective? And for all verbs but one, you cannot tell. There's one single verb, to go, where you have different forms for past and prospective. All the other ones look 100% identical and you can't tell from looking at the spelling. That's a little bit of a nuisance. Okay, guys, how do we want to continue? I had a bunch of example sentences. Should we use the last
Carry
few
on.
minutes?
Yeah, let's carry on next week because this is so helpful because all the things I've been too scared to say, I am now admitting that all this time I've had no idea what you're talking about. When you all just say Sejam this, Sejam that.
That's fine. Everything you've
Rebecca,
always...
I wanted to say some.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say something that Rebecca, you asked earlier about the definite article, so the word for the and how that shows up in Demotic and Coptic. Since we were talking about pronouns, I just wanted to clarify that really briefly. So really, please correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is that it was originally in Middle Egyptian. There's the word pi, like pi tai nai. That means a demonstrative pronoun meaning that, and eventually in late Egyptian that becomes the. And then that continues in Demotic and Coptic. Is that correct? Really? Is it?
That is
Yeah,
absolutely...
but in which case, why did Aurelia's Middle Egyptian example not include the?
Because I was trying to be, good question. I was trying to be as Middle Egyptian as possible. In other words, I left the article out.
But
I
he
think
was
it would
just
be
saying that there
wasn't.
were no articles. There were only
There
demonstrative.
was no article. There
Right.
was no
So it
definite
wouldn't have
article,
been
it's
on
only
top of the mountain. It would be on top of that mountain or on top of
Correct,
this mountain,
correct.
which then is a different sentence.
Correct.
Oh, it is. So
Exactly.
they would never have said then this invented sentence.
They might have said this, but it wouldn't be the same as the.
No.
It just isn't the same. It's not the
True.
same usage.
True.
It just
But did
devolved
they-
into meaning.
Yeah.
What could they say on top of the mountain or not? It didn't exist. They had to say on top of this mountain, that
It
mountain.
would be implied, but they wouldn't have used a definite article because there was no definite article form.
Right, exactly.
Sort of like in Latin grammar, there is no word for the.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
that's
have
fine.
that,
That's
and
fine. So that's
eventually
the
that
answer.
becomes lay and stuff in
Yeah,
French.
and
And
it's quite an
Got it.
advanced concept, isn't it? Having a definite article because it means, if you say on top the mountain, you're saying it's the mountain that we've already talked about, or the only possible mountain that it could be. That's quite a complicated. You can do without that.
I agree. That's why in my mind I was thinking upon head mountain. And that means haven't got to bring in this mountain, that mountain, or the non-existent the, which didn't exist at this stage.
Right.
Correct?
and that's similar to the as like kind of like that, and what Chris said, where like that on that mountain and on the mountain that we already talked about, they're kind of similar.
No, that's
Either
a
way,
red
you're
herring.
specifying.
Red herring. The issue is, can I do it without a demonstrative? I can if I'm Middle Egyptian. I
Yes.
just think in conceptual terms, I'm living in some place. Upon head mountain,
Mhm.
I don't even need to think about the. or that.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about in Middle Egyptian. It's something that shows up in Late Egyptian.
Yeah, but I don't think about it anyway. In my mind, when I'm translating all this, I'm not adding in thes and that's and that. I'm just thinking like a Middle Egyptian, which I've never studied.
Yeah, I mean, I do that with Latin too, because there's no word for the in Latin, but sometimes there's the, you need to have thes in English. So you will automatically supply it when
No,
it's
I
not
don't.
there.
I don't. That's the point. I don't. I don't automatically supply it. And I was saying to Aurelia, why is there a the, or why is there not a the? I don't need it, Ben.
I see. Okay. So you go from Middle Egyptian or Late Egyptian, you don't add the in part of your translation process.
No, I don't need to.
Okay.
I'm in a different world. I've gone in time travel.
And
Okay,
wait,
got it.
now two quick comments on that. So first off, the micro perspective. In classical Middle Egyptian, there are demonstratives, but there is no article per se. That being said, those demonstratives become weaker and weaker, and as time goes on, they get used more and more like articles. So I'd qualify the statement that's only in Late Egyptian quite a bit because you can see fairly old Middle Egyptian texts which already use the patana essentially as an article. So I think the Vulgata may do something similar in Latin, poor ille, like this boy essentially, which is almost
That's
like
true. Ile becomes the essentially in medieval Latin,
right.
and then eventually in the Romance languages, Ile becomes all the like
La,
la or
la,
Ile, Ila, Ilud
right.
becomes like el and la and all those
Right.
things that mean the in Romance languages.
Right. Now,
So
a few more comments on that. It's actually quite fascinating. A lot of languages don't have articles at all, whether definite or indefinite. Like Chinese doesn't have either. You can, if you need to, there's some tricks where you can create a similar effect, but normally they just don't bother. If you're talking about a student, the student that we talked about, you don't really need to specify that. If you have to, you can. Russian doesn't use them. I've had several Slavic speakers tell me over time that they find the concept of a definite article unbelievably confusing. Greek has a definite article, but no
Greek is
indefinite
a good
article.
example.
It doesn't have an indefinite one though, which is interesting. Like
No,
in
no, Ancient
English.
Greek has an indefinite article, has t and tis, or tis and t. There's one
Hmm.
that's they're very confusing. One of them it means one of them can be used as an indefinite article,
Oh, okay.
and the other one can, but it can if the accent can be used as a question as an interrogative pronoun, so
True.
it's confusing.
Do you use it though
But
normally? Like when you want to say, I saw a man in the agora or
you
something.
don't have to, but it,
That's the
it
thing.
it means like a certain. So it doesn't. It's not
Right.
used as commonly as our. It's not required. Like the definite articles are required,
And
but
and
it's
that's
more
where
to add additional.
that's where I wanted to go. In English, for example, definite indefinite is almost always required. There's some rare examples, like for example, you go to school. You don't go to the school, even though you go, I don't know, you go to the airport or something, but you go to school. It's like a set expression where you don't have to use the article. But with the exception of those
Yeah.
point something percent where we can do that. Otherwise, you always have to specify definite or
Well,
indefinite. Mhm.
And with some
Aurelio, I think
plurals.
another exception, when you want to talk about a whole class of something, you can say
Yes.
cats eat fish.
Right,
You don't have to say the cats eat fish or, you know,
I
you
was
can
just
say a
right.
thinking
whole
about
class of
Man is like
objects.
this, basically. That would be an example. Yes, Rebecca.
Um, a friend of mine who's from Hong Kong and doesn't really speak English asked me to look at her PhD. And the thing that she found incredibly difficult was Jesus said things like, I didn't come to call the righteous, I came to call sinners. And she kept putting in the sinners. And I thought about it more and more and more. And I said, if you say the sinners, you're talking about those sinners there. That's the demonstrative thing. So in the end, we came down to the fact that it was not logical. And it's something the way that English has evolved.
Right.
And the Hong Kong people always put the in the wrong place. And as I read through, it was always wrong. But whenever she tried to do what I just told her, it was wrong because it didn't apply in that environment. And same with Indian people. It's just that they use the differently. So I've
Right.
said it's still English, it's just Hong Kong English.
It's
And
it's
Jesus, who knows? I mean, I came to save sinners. I came to save the sinners. Which ones?
right. It's
Right.
super
Like one is
intricate.
more general, like sinners in general, and the other one is like the specific sinners, right?
But in
But
the
like
Greek,
that
in the Greek, it
nuance.
said, in the Greek, it says, I came to save the sinners. She said, but I'm just
Right.
translating the Greek. And I said, oh dear, well, unfortunately, for the last 500
Oh, I
years,
see.
that all the Bibles have been saying I came to save sinners. So the original translation had missed out but it was there in the Greek.
Hmm.
Does
Right. I
anyone know
think
if
that's because
does
it
anyone know
was
if
used.
Aramaic has articles?
Does it?
I
It
Oh,
does
have no
actually.
idea.
So they're similar to Hebrew, and they're suffixes instead of prefixes. So Hebrew has ha, Aramaic has ah on as a suffix.
Oh, cool.
yeah. Thank you, Chris, for that. Because any future people listening, Jesus did not speak Greek. Just a note for
No,
this.
it's Aramaic.
Nor did Jesus speak in the King James Bible. So if you're an American out there, Jesus did not speak using the King James Bible.
What are they?
How
Okay.
could he? There's
Oh,
that meme. What was it? In all his years, Caesar didn't say thank you once, presumably because he didn't
oh my
speak English.
gosh.
So,
Ooh.
but yeah.
Oh,
Let's go.
well, real quick thing. Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Real quick
No,
thing
go ahead.
about definite articles in Greek that's amazing is that in Homeric Greek, you have a weird thing that happened. It's unusual because Homeric Greek, all the definite articles were essentially demonstratives.
Mhm.
So it's well, actually, it's not that unusual. Greek has always had some. It didn't. Homeric Greek really didn't have definite articles. It had demonstratives,
Mhm.
but those in classical Greek become definite articles. So that they originally are like the, sorry, originally they're like that, or like this one, or that sort of thing, or that one, and then they become the in classical Greek. And so it's kind of it goes from you have these forms. It's kind of like pi tai nai in Egyptian a little bit, becoming just the. But and it's a little bit different from Latin where there aren't any to begin with, and you have well, actually, it's similar to like you
Same.
have something that's a demonstrative and becomes the, basically that to the. So it's a similar thing.
It's the same in all of them. So Egyptian does this first. Greek does it, like you described, from Homeric to classical. Germanic languages. Originally, it's not. We don't have articles either. It's the demonstratives that become articles. Now, the interesting question is this a process that just happens over and over again? And it's always the same, sort of like some sound changes which happen in all languages and they're not related, or is it an area phenomenon that spread? There's an interesting paper out there that basically cracked it down and mapped it out, and it starts in Egypt, then it happens in Greek, then it happens in Romance languages, and then it happens in Germanic languages. It's like, hey, is that maybe spreading? But then again, you have definite articles in Hawaiian. And I don't think the Egyptians ever got there, at least to my knowledge. So that that speaks against that whole area spread theory as the only possible way how you can get articles. But it's super interesting. The Hawaiian theory, or the spread paper. I looked that up once, and put the link on the server. I can try to find it again. It was basically when I read that, I thought, wow, that's interesting. Like an aerial feature basically that emanates from Egypt. But I think it's just as well
That's
possible
cool.
that this is just what demonstratives do. They become weaker and weaker, and over time they turn into articles.
And Akkadian and Sumerian don't have definite articles either. So that's definitely, I guess Egypt would be an earlier thing to start with. But I wonder if there are other Near Eastern languages like I don't know if Hittite, I haven't studied Hittite yet, but I don't know if they have definite articles.
I don't.
That would be interesting to look at. But I imagine they're probably just demonstrative. I have no idea.
All right. Yeah, no, you're right. Akkadian doesn't have them. Hebrew, of course, does. And whom were the Hebrews in contact with? Egyptians. But yeah, let's continue
And
on that
Aramaic
note
speakers.
in 2 weeks. Um, all right, great session. Let's do one more of these. But then after that, I would say we should continue with the prospective SEGMF, and a little bit further with our Niveau book. Or maybe we do one of those recap sessions, I don't know, every 4 sessions or so, if you guys like. Okay. Cool.
Sounds good. This is very helpful. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for my indiscipline in talking,
No
but I'm
worries.
really glad that Aurelio is nearly now as bad as Christian. So he's now getting on to Hawaii. So we've managed to get you to go off the subject whilst we can.
Rebecca, thank you for all these questions. These are like very wonderful to have all these questions and be able to answer them. And
This is great. I love these
really
review
helpful. It's a
sessions. I
great
think we should,
discussion. So
yeah, we should do as many of these as it takes. These are great.
Fine with me. Fine with me. Cool, guys.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
Thank you.
weekend. Bye-bye.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
you too. Bye.
Bye.